Lappy? Can you hear me alright, Lappy? Please let me know if the audio works alright. Excellent. We'll wait until a couple more people. Excellent. We'll wait until a couple more people show up to get started, and then we'll begin. What I am certain is the finale of Yasumi's Row, we will certainly reach the end. But we'll hold here for a moment. We'll hold here until a couple more people arrive. Give everyone a moment or so. It's very warm lately. It is unseasonably summer-like weather in mid-September. And I am using, you all haven't seen it, but I've been using a guide throughout the entirety of Shiro to help me make sure that we do the unlocks that are needed and to go down the paths that are necessary. Of course, I'm also gonna do some unlocks off camera if they are you know, just retreads largely of scenes that we've done before that don't really have a lot of new content, but we just need to unlock them. But if there are any interesting unlocks, we'll go ahead and we'll all do those together. But the walkthrough that I'm using is actually dated back to September 12th, 2009. The walkthrough that I am using is precisely 14 years old. And it's the walkthrough that came along with the original fan translation of the English patch. Including sort of like a brief outline of about 56 different endings. Now, the particular number of endings that this game has is something that I've talked about a lot. I think officially Steam lists it as like having some like 30 odd endings. The sources in this walkthrough count up to 56, and then there are some others that talk about like endings 85 plus. I'm not necessarily sure that 85 is what I would call like the full number of, like, you know, these are unique endings. A lot of these endings are generally going to be the same or simply terminations of a route that you have not yet unlocked. So, for example, trying to go on Kohaku's route earlier in the game, when we were on Migiwa's route and we had none of Kohaku's seals unlocked, led us to the same sort of, like, dead end facing against the Morio in the Test of Courage, basically 3 times over. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily count that as 3 different endings, but you did get 3 different scenes heading up to there. So, in some way, it is an interesting thing. But I think we'll see as we go along in Kohaku's route later, which, if we're lucky, will start right after this. That there's some overlap in scenes and scenery from different aspects in different areas. So we are on at the end of day 4, and remember that this game actually only covers the span of 5 days, and it is the evening of day 4. Remembering what happened last time. So last time we went through a whole lot, actually. Last time so many things happened. So after the revelations, hello. Hello, Myogon. No, I hope it was a very tasty dinner. Yes. I was just about to begin and remind everyone about what happened last time. So, last time, we had quite an adventure with Yasumi because we started out having, just gotten to the revelation that Yasumi is the one who is like the long-haired ghost that was like feeding on people's spiritual energy at night. And then Shoko nobly decided, well, okay, you can keep doing that, but you can only sucky from me. And that sure escalated the number of blood drinking CGs that we had by a lot, because we had 4 of them just last week. And so after discussing some of the things related to Yasumi's past, we learned that her last name, her original family name, was actually Nekata. So Nekata Yasumi, who is the daughter of Munetsugu, the guy who we know from Migiwa's route, definitely, like, at the center of this whole mysterious ritual of Kuro-sama, the, like, eldritch sea god sort of sacrifice things. Maybe the one who killed Shoko's, big sister cousin, Kaya, and maybe the reason Kaya is now an Oni, and also capable of slicing an ox's head off in a single stroke. That's Yasumi's dad. And so they decided that they would go onto the island, onto Urashima, in order to get some more answers. Like, this is the last chance that they'll have. They're gonna make sure that they can get some answers. And while there, Yasumi also discovered, she was like, well, let me see if I can do astral projection. And it turns out she can do that pretty succinctly. They pretend that they are not here investigating anything and go up to the manor, and then walked in. Yasumi read some books and found out, like, the secret history of her family, that there's been, like, intentional human sacrifice over time, mostly to, like, sate the hunger of the sea god, but also that this was sort of a thing that is tied up in some less savory stuff as well, because in addition to that, the family, they make this hinokusuri, which is like this special medicine made of the red tsubaki that flower on this island. And it turns out that that's not actually the ingredient. The special ingredient is the blood of Yasuhime, who is the nun who was traveling around and imprisoned the ox spirit long ago. And she's immortal, so they've just kept her chained up and have been extracting flesh or blood or some other vital essence from her for centuries. So, yeah, very normal stuff. So, all of that happens, and then of course Munetsugu realizes, oh, no, I had a feeling that you all weren't just like random students who happened over here. Yasumi, you're definitely my estranged daughter who hates me. And Shoko, you're, I guess, her girlfriend, although I don't know if he picks up on that. He's hard to read, though I feel like he would be just as angry, no matter what the truth is, because he is just a bitter, spiteful person. I do think he recognizes Shoko, though, as the person that he tried to sacrifice those many years ago. Which, is why Yasumi and Shoko are secret childhood friends. All comes back to the good tropes. And basically, Yasumi's body is now elsewhere in the possession of Munetsugu. It explained that her older sister was actually vanished and maybe used as a sacrifice in family tradition when she was younger. And that she fears that maybe this is going to happen to her. So she astral projects, but she can't keep her astral form together very often. So Shoko offers to let Yasumi possess her. So, that's where we are today. We just said, yes, let's go ahead and girlfriend possession. We're moving very quickly. You see, like, when you start this game, you could be forgiven for thinking that Yasumi's route is maybe the slower, more, like, low-key, relaxed one, given that she doesn't seem to have any supernatural powers at first and doesn't seem to be involved in any of this, and she's got a frail constitution. But actually, no, her roller coaster is, I think, far more intense than Miki was. We need a container that will protect the soul from the outside world. For a spirit to continue to stay in this world, it needs to attach itself to some vessel. Whether it's a person or a thing, something organic or even inorganic. There were two choices ahead of us. It said that the Tokusaki no Tsubaki that seals Matamu had Yasuhime-sama's power in it. It's not just the Tokusaki no Tsubaki. Many shrines have a sacred tree, and the forest is treated as a sacred ground. In other words, it might have the capacity and power to act as a vessel for the soul. And the wooden sword Kumochi, able to exterminate demons. I was holding it. It was made from that same material. That was one choice. The other one was what Yasumi had possessed earlier, my own body. Alright. Next quick choice. So, I'm gonna make a safety save here. Oh yes, you did pop in just in time, Bismuth. So yeah, do you think, moving forward, do you think that, Yasumi should continue to possess Shoko as she did previously? Or possess the sword in Shoko's hand? Both of these can lead to some fascinating results, but only one of them will actually have us go forward with Yasumi's route. I believe the other one has us unlock a seal, so we have to do it eventually. But, you know. Here, let me rearrange the, yes, possessed girlfriend. Okay, hijacking your girlfriend off. Thank you, Bismuth. Alright. Possess Shoko, I believe, is what's winning out by... Oh, no, okay, everybody vote again. Remember, you have unlimited votes. No, you have to use the pound sign, Bismuth. It's like old dial-in. You must use the pound sign. Alright, we've got 2 for Possess Shoko. We've got 1 for Become Sword. Who will... What is going to... Alright. Okay. Gonna going once. Yep. What does that mean? Listen now, Bismuth. Alright. Alright. I'll show you both of them. Because you all feel so strongly. I'm going to show you, first off, the one that does not advance Yasumi's route. Becoming Sword. It was a miraculous wooden sword. And as long as I was on this island, It was a lifeline that I wouldn't let go of. Yasumi's body disappeared with a puff. I felt that Kumochi, which I was holding in my hand, got a little heavier. Maybe it's similar to when you evacuate to a long, unused house and find a spiderweb inside, the ceiling and dust all over the floor. The wind made the red tsubaki flowers, which had fallen, dance in the air. It looked as if the night was bleeding. When I opened my eyes, Yasumi was there. A transparent Yasumi. Right now, Yasumi doesn't have a physical body, so it'd be hard for her to push a button to check the time on a phone. When I went to check the time myself, unfortunately, I noticed that the batteries had run out. Looking outside the shrine, I checked the sky. The sun was still high up, and the west wasn't bathed in red, but it was closer to dusk than noon. This calm atmosphere, where all impurities had been blown away, felt a bit strained. So much so that the silence felt heavy. Yasumi's body disappeared with a puff. She was only returning to her vessel, but it was as if she were really a ghost. She really was a spirit, though. Though I hoped that it was put in place out of parental love to prevent bad spirits from entering Yasumi's body. We didn't know the exact time, and that was probably the case based on the direction of the sun. Translator note, Otosan means daddy. So, it's something like While the cat's away, hoping that Yasumi's body was still there, we headed toward the mansion. After entering the Nakata grounds, Yasumi left her vessel and appeared as a transparent figure. So, being inside a barrier where the power was stable was like residing in a large vessel. Yasumi vanished into thin air and I couldn't see her anymore. Physical distances probably didn't affect a spirit that much. So, if Nakata-san had already left, then the solitary power that Yasumi sensed was likely... Compared to when she had a body, it was a little difficult to tell where here was, but I headed into the back room of the mansion. It was a straight path, so I arrived without getting lost. And lying on a futon in that room wasn't Yasumi's body, but... It was Nami, who should have been at Shoshinji. Though I shook her and tapped her cheek, Nami didn't wake. Yasumi put her transparent hand, tinted with the color of the setting sun, atop Nami's and slipped inside of her body. Thank you. Good luck with the cookies. Please, assign Aoi Shiro characters as cookies someday. I don't know what flavors they would be. We'll figure it out eventually together. Just watching it made me uncomfortable, but it might be even more so for the actual person who had to feel such a thing. As I reached for my cell phone to contact them, Shoko, you realized that you were out of battery earlier. You're so gay, you've forgotten. Ah, that's right. I'd forgotten to charge my phone and now I couldn't even confirm the time of day. I didn't wait for a reply and left the room where Yasumi was staring intently at Nami. In Nakata-san's room, I found a black telephone of a type you seldom see these days. My grandpa also took care of his things, but maybe because of work he used faxes and things like that. Rotary phones were rare. I'd had the slim hope that there had been a cell phone charger, but in a place like this, even a cell phone is probably not going to be around. Anyway, Nakata-san seemed to be the type of person who didn't have need of any phone conversations. I gingerly turned the dial on the unfamiliar phone and called Aoi-sensei, whose cell phone was still at Shoshinji. I was afraid she might refuse the call since the number was unknown. But after a short time, Aoi-sensei picked up. There had been a ton of problems, but I didn't really know where to begin or end, and I couldn't really well tell my teacher about the Yuri vampirism that I'd been getting up to. Anyways, there should at least be a record of a phone call from Nakata-san's house to Aoi-sensei's cell phone. If Yasumi and I were to go missing, it would provide substantial evidence against Nakata-san and might act as some insurance for us, just in case something happened. I told an awkward lie. Not exactly a lie, but I wasn't so naive as to think that Aoi-sensei wouldn't suspect I was hiding anything. After all, the first words I heard over the phone were already something she muttered in a nervous voice. It was about what I expected. She was wandering around and searching for us when she disappeared. Since Nami had searched me out countless times at night, that way of thinking couldn't have been helped. No helping it. That was probably true, so it wasn't a lie. Of course, they woke up at like 4 p.m., you know. There was a high possibility that when I woke up in the Tsubaki Shrine, Nakata had already left the mansion. After all, today was the day of Kuro-sama's festival. After finishing the phone call and returning to where Nami was sleeping, Yasumi looked at me with a serious expression. This child? Yasuhime-sama. Nami looked to be about 10 or 12. In the past, people considered you to be about a year old at birth, so age was just a rough estimate. Also, I wondered if Yasuhime-sama was the person floating amongst the bubbles that I saw in my memory. So Nami couldn't, or shouldn't, be Yasuhime. If the word Yasuhime didn't specify... if Yasuhime didn't refer to a specific person, but was rather a specific title given to the priestess of Kuro-sama, then the inconsistency with the age and outward appearance wouldn't really matter. If this child returned here, then she would only be a sacrifice used by Nakata-san to make the necessary Hinokusuri. Nakata-san wanted to use me, who could bear the Hinokusuri, as a sacrifice in place of his daughter. And that's what happened 8 years ago, but because of Yasumi's quick thinking, I was able to escape safely. Then, If the ritual was to continue, he'd need someone else besides me to be a living sacrifice. Yasumi's body remained in Nakata-san's hands. She wasn't the eldest child brought up to be a sacrifice, but she was the younger twin sister, and she had the same blood running through her. I was concerned that it wasn't in the mansion. Meaning that it was written down in the ancient documents she read yesterday. Though everyone remained huddled up inside on the days of the festival, a human sacrifice still wouldn't take place where someone might chance to see it. In the worst case, if disaster happened and you had nowhere to escape, the inundation of water coming in with the tide would drown you. Because Yasumi and I learned what kind of treatment Yasuhime-sama would receive, we couldn't just leave her here. If this child was Yasuhime-sama, to let them wring out her living blood to make medicine. I had no objections to taking Nami out of here, but we're going to pass through the secret passageways to the hidden sanctuary, so even our own safety wasn't guaranteed. She should be safe there for the time being, in the stone that's suspiciously ritual sacrifice shaped. She spiritedly clenched both hands into fists and brought her transparent face close to Nami's. Since she was a spirit, I wasn't sure if she could breathe or not, but Yasumi took several deep breaths to steady herself. She became more transparent and the contours of her body blurred as she melded with Nami's. I stared intently to determine her condition. Nami's eyelids, or at least the eyelids of her body, opened. She sat up from the futon, moved her arms, and twisted her body. Yes. 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 Are you all... Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. I wouldn't be doing this on Twitch if I suspected there was danger, but also you're all not wrong to be afraid, because I also was afraid. And in fact, the only consolation I can provide you all is that we're on Yasumi's route right now. We're not on Nami's route. I'm actually gonna have to review parts of Nami's route to make sure that I can continue streaming it on Twitch, and to make sure I want to continue streaming it for anyone. But again, I do need to reassure you, this game doesn't, like, it's never had H scenes, right? Like, we saw Migiwa's route. It had, like, some stuff that was like, okay, that's a service shot, but, like, there wasn't anything too rough. Although, we've also had a lot of shots of Nami in the bath, and that's been uncomfortable a bit. Anyhow, let's not worry about that at present. We'll deal with that as it occurs. It was a concrete example that I could think about and visualize clearly. If the water was the same, then there's no problems with it mixing together, but for example, if you added water with food coloring, red and blue would combine to make purple, and white and black would form a gray haze. In drawing class, the water used to wash off the brush tips was mixed with many colors and became some nebulous, blurry shade. Instead of being crammed into one room, it'd be like living in a different room of the same apartment, so it's not exactly the same space. Oh, it's like, you know, pouring water into different trays in an ice cube tray. Hello, Trundle. Trundle, would you like to come and greet the people? Come on up. Show people what you've learned, Trundle. Come up. I wonder if Yasuhime was like that as well. Was she a vessel into which God could descend? Trundle has left, unfortunately. Yasumi and I stopped walking and instinctively looked at each other, though it was a little strange since the face I looked at was Nami's. Yasumi seemed to enjoy the rare experience of walking in another body as we headed out of the Tsubaki shrine. Suddenly, she said, the Yasuhime-sama I thought I knew was... What was she supposed to have seen? The scene strung together by bubbles shouldn't have been witnessed by anyone else. But the Yasuhime-sama I knew wasn't like Nami at all. It looked like the Little Mermaid from a children's story. No. Now wasn't the time to be thinking about Nami's true identity. We needed to reach the underground sanctuary and recover Yasumi's body before Nakata-san could begin the hidden ritual. It was still light outside, but we needed to hurry. We know where the entrance is, but we didn't really know which passageways to take afterwards. Only Nakata-san would know about the shrine in the Tsubaki forest. Because, at that shrine, alright. Another plot critical choice is upon us. Do we hide Nami's body somewhere nearby, or do we use Nami's body to continue on towards the ritual site? Unfortunately, with this one, there is a correct choice. So if you would like me to simply pick the correct choice, that is also an option that you can vote for. Yes, the danger of continuing to possess Nami's body is that, well, what if it becomes difficult for Yasumi to leave it? But then also, what if Nami ends up getting hurt? And then the hiding part is, well, what if she wakes up and she's all alone, and then something happens to us, and then she's just stranded there on this island where no one knows where she is. So Vector has voted for picking the correct choice to advance on Yasumi's route, and if we hear no dissent within the next few seconds, I think I will go with that. So the correct choice is to use Nami's body and bring her along. That seemed to be the safest thing to do. Yasumi had a complicated expression on her face as I answered. She remained silent and nodded to me. Like the telephone I saw earlier, Nakata-san probably didn't redecorate the house, so it was likely the same as when Yasumi had lived here. I was walking through a green forest. After passing the mansion, we headed through a mountain road towards the entrance of the underground sanctuary. Because no one was out and about on the day of the festival, even when we passed by normal roads, no one saw us. I had a strange sense of deja vu. Like guiding lights, rocks gave off a faint blue phosphorescence and lined the side of the cave. The rocks had geometric whirlpool designs carved into them, and they looked clearly artificial. Because the glowing pattern repeated over and over, it was light enough that a flashlight wasn't necessary. I slid my finger across the surface, but I only felt salt water. As we continued, why does Yasumi know about luminescent moss? I just assumed that Yasumi knows a lot of random things that she read in books. I also know about luminescent moss, so. Before, the cave was a natural, with man-made stones being placed here and there. But now, all the stones were man-made, and there were cobblestones lining up to the ceiling. Instead of natural placements, the rocks with glowing blue-white whirlpools were all lined up along the walls. Our target was close. That hunch caused both of us to fall silent. We were no longer in a passageway, but in a large room that I didn't really believe could have existed underground. The room was surrounded with stones giving off that same phosphorescent light, and it really made it look like the Dragon King's palace. Waterways. The waterways around the stones were about 2 meters in width, dividing the room into 9 parts. In the middle was an island with a pedestal on top of it. That pedestal consisted of thick circles of gradually decreasing width stacked on top of one another, like a pyramid. At the top was a conspicuously rectangular stone. If that was a coffin, then this cavern was the burial chamber. And on top of that piece of stone that looked like a coffin was... I said that in a low voice as I resisted the temptation to run forward. Since we've been underground for so long, we don't know what time it is, and Nakata-san might already be here. If he was here, it was already too late, but I stayed silent and looked around. With my physical abilities, I could jump 2 meters easily without much of a running start. Actually, I'd be more worried about jumping too far and falling over onto the other side, so I carefully controlled my jump. This is important when you're platforming. With Nami's feeble body and Yasumi's lack of athletic sense, if she jumped with all her might, it'd probably be okay. I opened up both my arms to demonstrate. That's right, if we brought Nami's body to the center and Yasumi left it, we'd have to bring it back, and that would be a lot more trouble. Yasumi confirmed that the area around her feet was safe and then lay down in Nami's body. Yasumi's spirit came out of Nami's body. On top of the pedestal in the middle of the blue-white light lay Yasumi's body. Floating in the air, Yasumi peered down at herself. As I was catching up, Yasumi didn't return to her body, but made a circle around the pedestal, just staring at herself with interest. The height was a little large for this to be steps. I climbed to the top, the pyramid, and confirmed that Yasumi's body was all right. Yasumi used both of her arms to try and block me from seeing, but since she was transparent, it only acted like a thin veil. Yasumi realized that her actions were meaningless and entered her body as if it were a hole she wanted to sink into. Her eyelids fluttered and opened. Our eyes met. Yasumi gave an abashed smile as she moved her body, testing it out. She hugged both of her shoulders. Since she was almost sacrificed, you couldn't really say that she should be this happy that her body was okay. Looking at Yasumi's antics, which were a little bit like a puppy chasing its own tail, made me laugh involuntarily. Ah. Here we go. At the sound of that low laughter resounding in the underground sanctuary, Yasumi stopped and stared at me in puzzlement. I looked around the sanctuary to find the owner of that low, cackling voice. Into the sanctuary filled with blue light, a person entered who looked far more suitable to this place. It's my favorite! It's my favorite! Hello, Kohaku. White skin, white hair, and also this person. Her left eye was closed. Grinning, a white fang shone through like that of a beast. I personally think that it's cowardly that they narrated that there was a fang and they didn't show us a fang in her grinning portrait. But Kohaku is not at fault. Kohaku is perfect. The room had already been filled with a faint glow, and an even stronger light now started to glow in the waterway. Illuminated from below, the shadow cast on the wall from that person looked enormous. The feeling I got from it was domineering, oppressive. Really, it was like an Oni. Two nights ago was the day I found out about Yasumi's secret. At that time, I didn't know it was Yasumi, so I asked Migiwa for help. there, someone sent Morio to attack us. But that wasn't the first time I'd seen them. The night before, when I was with Yasumi on the test of courage, that time the person I'd met was not a Morio. Reflexively, I held Komochi in a fighting stance. This was the one-eyed, white-haired Onmyoji who taught the Nakata about offering sacrifices to the sea god of the sanctuary. Looking at the tip of my weapon, the one-eyed, white-haired Onmyoji looked happy and said something inexplicable. I remembered this person, but was there something strange about my body? A little before now, before Yasumi had returned to her body, it's true she'd been in someone else's form, but had this person been watching us since then? No, she was definitely looking at me and not Yasumi. She didn't seem to care about my bewilderment, but seemed happy to see me wielding Kumochi. As if the excitement couldn't be contained within her, her fangs peeked out from under her lips. With a puzzled look, her gaze slid away from me and moved to where Nami, wrapped in white clothes, had been lying motionless after Yasumi left her body earlier. Nami didn't have her usual dreamy look. Her eyes were instead filled with a mysterious power as she looked at the Onmyoji. As if she'd just used up all of her energy, she collapsed again. The person who had her left eye closed fixed the red right eye on Nami and looked at her suspiciously. So, the person who passed down the ritual of offering sacrifices, wasn't it this person right here? Laughing deep in her throat, she narrowed her solitary red eye. Kicking the floor, she jumped closer. She swept the air with her longsword. So, these options are framed and translated strangely. You can say, I don't have the sword, or you can give her Kumochi. I know that's not readily apparent from these choices, but you can do one of those two. Now, because this is an option that is like extremely obtuse, and I don't know if you would actually be able to parse what these mean, I'm simply going to pick the correct one to advance the route. At least I think so, because again, these are very difficult to parse, so even I am not actually sure which one I'm supposed to be picking. Was that sword what Mikiwa had been talking about? I didn't understand anything anymore. Thank you, Myogan. The one-eyed, white-haired Onmyoji tapped her shoulder with the back of her blade as she pondered. The Onmyoji finished thinking and looked at Yasumi with her red eye. The one-eyed, white-haired Onmyoji squinted and laughed as if she was going to say something outrageous. She told Yasumi to die. She nimbly leapt forward and drew near. I barely managed to get in front of Yasumi and block the swing of the one-eyed, white-haired Onmyoji. Kumochi didn't get severed in two, but stopped the blade halfway through the wood. I wasn't going to say, "Yes, go ahead," when she said that she was going to kill Yasumi. Her blade flew. From the top, bottom, right, and left. The blade flew in all directions. I was only able to block her attacks. Should she call herself powerless if she could move the blade with such speed? She took out an ofuda from the inside of her kimono and tossed it into the air. The piece of paper was sliced 8 times, becoming 16 fragments which scattered around the room. Behind the spray of sliced paper, her body vanished. Camouflage? Where, in an instant, a heavy blow transferred from Kumochi to my arms and shoulders. The long sword howls. It's true that Kumochi was battered, but it hadn't broken yet and acted both as my weapon and shield. After pulling out her sword where it just sunk into Kumochi, the Onmyoji left back. Pulling out another ofuda like the one used in her previous illusion, she held it between her first 2 fingers. The Onmyoji divided into 2 images side by side and attacked me at once. If the double were stronger than the original, she would have used it from the start, so it was surely something like a fragile illusion. My wooden sword struck it. Since it didn't make much of a scream, perhaps it was even weaker than the Morio. The Shikigami, which resembled the Onmyoji, vanished into smoke as Kumochi pierced it. But just by drawing my attention at sword, the Shikigami had done its job. And Kumochi, which had stopped that one strike from a high overhead stance, had finally reached its limit and broke in 2. Kahaku's so cool. I mean, she is about to kill us, but like, Kahaku's so cool. Yasumi, who should have been behind me. Yasumi was lying down on a hard platform that glowed with blue-white light. That might be a good thing. I closed my eyes when she said that. The blade that would cleave my head hadn't fallen yet. Fearfully, I opened my eyes. I didn't do anything. The person who didn't give up and did something instead was... There's no way I can do that. How could I run away and leave Yasumi to fight by herself? Then I should also fight. Komochi was broken, but if there's some other weapon, why Yasumi was stopping the Yomiji's movements? Or should I just tie her up? Wait, think carefully. Just as in a shogi game, we were already cornered them into a brinkmate. Even if we were on the verge of being cornered, it wasn't checkmate yet, was it? And then Yasumi was chased out of the Onmyoji's body. I picked up Yasumi's body from where it was lying on the ground and ran for the exit. If the Onmyoji had been hampered just a little longer, or if I'd made a faster decision to escape. With the voice of the Onmyoji at my back, I let Yasumi, who had just woken up, down. Yasumi was slower than most people, but it would still be faster to have her run herself than to have me carry her. Though we had only been able to put distance between ourselves and the Onmyoji a bit, I couldn't let Yasumi's hard work go to waste. The Onmyoji's voice was still coming from the spot behind us. We were almost to the exit. If we could just reach that complicated underground passageway, we would definitely be able to escape. The exit was... The shadow deep within the passageway quickly increased in density. It wasn't that something was there, but that something was coming closer. It was like Yasumi's spirit when it left her body. Something would suddenly appear in a different place before us. It was... Her words trailed off. I knew that this wasn't fake. The one-eyed Onmyoji gave me a derisive laugh. At the front gate wasn't a wolf, but an Oni. I stopped moving, since I didn't know what path to take. Yasumi tugged on my arm. She was saying that we shouldn't go back to where the Onmyoji was, but forward, towards the large Oni and the exit. Though the Oni was massive, it didn't give the impression of being slow like in the movies, and I didn't think that we could slip through its legs. What was Yasumi thinking, telling us to move towards it? We should face an Oni with an Oni, and use a Shikigami against a Shikigami. But that was impossible for me and for Yasumi as well. She tried to show me last night. As if to calm her nerves, she placed a hand on her chest. I had a bad feeling. So the power of Kumochi doesn't just come from Yasuhime-sama, but also from Matamu. Yasumi gave a powerless smile for an instant, and she tightened her expression as she looked straight into my eyes. She looked gay into your eyes. Her firm decision showed in her face. She closed her eyes and caught her breath. Power flowing out of Yasumi looked like a sticky, viscous mass and became a swirl of black fog. black miasma full of power coiled around Yasumi, who used her own body as its core. Yasumi shook her head from side to side. Matamu would greedily devour the power around it and grow larger all on its own. And also this place was... Using Yasumi as a seed and growing with her, after absorbing enough power, an Oni in the shape of a beast appeared. As told in the legend, able even to conquer the weather, an incarnation of the Oni King's curse, wielding massive power, took form. The one called the Beast of Calamity, which wouldn't lose even to an Onmyoji's giant Oni, had materialized before us. Nami, who'd collapsed and remained sleeping ever since Yasumi left her body, had get who Yasumi had thought was Yasuhime after she possessed her. Nami was now standing upright, her white skin, white hair, and white kimono bathed in the lapis lazuli light and made her look mystical. I couldn't imagine that sort of commanding speech came from Nami. It must have come from Yasuhime-sama, who sealed Matamu in the Tokusaki no Tsubaki. As she said that, she came closer. I hesitated to call her Nami anymore. Declaring that, she faced Yasumi and stretched out her hand. Chanting a short incantation, Matamu, who had gathered around Yasumi and almost solidified, vanished. I supported Yasumi, who looked almost as if she were about to collapse, and glared at the one I couldn't call Nami anymore, but rather Yasuhime. The Onmyoji, who treated all unknown persons as enemies, held out her sword and glared at Yasuhime. Perhaps that was a phrase that struck her to the core because the Onmyoji, said to be Kuro-sama, became restless. Wasn't Kuro-sama the dragon god of Uroshima, to whom sacrifices were offered? It's not rare to have a god demand sacrifices, and for the Onmyoji who taught the ritual to be Kuro-sama itself, but watching that ritual she called it idiotic, and even said she wanted to destroy this place. But by her reply, she acknowledged that she herself was Kuro-sama. Oyasu, So, like Yasumi said, was she really Yasuhime-sama? Implying that this was an incredibly foolish thing to do, she cut off her own words. Yeah, it is kind of gay. The events that happened afterwards went in accordance with what was written in the ancient texts of the Nakata. In the middle of her travels, Yasuhime-sama was captured and held captive here. The Onmyoji looked downward and said to Yasuhime, the one called Kuro-sama snapped open her eye. The color of her face displayed her anger. I shielded Yasumi with my arms as Kuro-sama rushed forward to kill us. The pearlescent tears fluttered down and burst. The power within her body ending. So, that is of course not the happy ending, but it is an incredible bad end that you only get if you possess Kumochi rather than having Yasumi directly possess Shoko, which is why I made that safety save. So, let's go back now and fast forward a little bit, and we possess Shoko. A sharp sensation ran through my skin, like something that happens when you're soaking in a tub of hot water. After that, it was like my body was permeated with something warm and... maybe it was because she was within me, so I could hear her voice more clearly, but no, maybe it was like her thoughts. Since I wasn't prepared to hear such a loud voice all of a sudden, even I was shocked. It seemed that there was some difference in the makeup between our bodies. Kon was the spiritual energy that supported the soul. Paku was the spiritual energy that supported the body. By the way, there's another unique bad end that you could get if we had left Nami somewhere else, such that she was not there to stop Matamu from materializing, and it would have led to the Ox Demon materializing and then eating everyone, which is another fascinating bad ending, but not one that we need to take time to go through on the stream. That one bad ending that we just got was actually like, I feel it is very good for the lore. And also, we'll be able to get back to that point pretty quickly once we get a little closer. The wind made the red tsubaki flowers which had fallen dance in the air. It looked as if the night was bleeding. When I opened my eyes, Yasumi was there. A transparent Yasumi. Right now, Yasumi doesn't have a physical body. So, right now we are about at the same, remember, where we were previously, so we're going to skip ahead a little bit. And we see Nami, and we have that conversation on the phone with Aoi-sensei. And then we make that... Wait. Yes, we make that call about using Nami's body to go there. Alright. And then we continue on further in. Oops. Did I? Okay, there we go. If he was here, it was already too late, but I stayed silent and looked around. With my physical abilities, I could jump 2 meters easily, so we've already read this as well. Alright, and we have Kohaku back here again, and we don't have the sword. Alright, and... Alright, and then we have this very gay moment. Alright, so let's see what happens this time. Though we'd only just been able to put distance between ourselves, we couldn't put Yasumi's hard work to waste, so... The Onmyoji's voice was still coming from the same spot as before, far behind us. We were almost to the exit. If we could just reach that complicated, twisting collection of underground passageways, we should be able to escape. The exit was... The shadow deep from within the passageway quickly increased in density. The one-eyed Onmyoji gave us a derisive laugh. At the front gate wasn't a wolf, but an Oni. I clenched my molars and tried to find even the tiniest gap where we could continue forward as Yasumi tugged on my sleeve. Her gaze fell to the waterway glowing with lapis lazuli light below us. My memory from 8 years ago. That memory was sunk deep within me, and it was something I couldn't even reach myself. No, that was... That might have been true. And from this waterway out to the sea. From there, I would have floated ashore to Unasaka and was treated as a victim of an accident, since I also didn't remember anything from that time. I saw it in my dream, though. A gate that shone underwater. The glow of the waterway was the same as that of the gate. I reached out my hand to Yasumi. Yasumi caught my hand and we tightly intertwined our fingers. Nodding to each other, we jumped. The moment we jumped, the light became stronger. The glowing water surrounded and dragged us along with it. As if to let us escape from the Onmyoji's grasp, it dragged us outside. We were swept along the waterway. Since, in the first place, I couldn't inhale, the strong pressure against me made my chest hurt. In order not to lose that, I held onto Yasumi as hard as I could. The rush of water hadn't stopped, but my body began to feel lighter, and must have been fleshed out to a wider area. Just in my memory, I saw a gate. Different from what I remembered, the glow of it was much stronger. Half open, the gate sucked in the surrounding seawater, dragging us along. Yasumi and I were pulled closer, swept up towards the other side of the gate. Just in the nick of time, I was able to grab onto the ledge. Using all my remaining strength, I pulled us up to the top of the gate. Seems like they're very safe now. The place Yasumi and I had climbed on top after being swept out here in the ocean was a monolith rising up from the water. The monolith was a rectangular block, like the slabs you'd cut in two in kendo matches, but much larger. And lying near us was a girl with wounds all over her body, dressed in a weird ninja costume or something like that. I didn't know whether she was alive or dead, but her pale face looked familiar. And next to her was Nikata, who had a stern expression on his face as he glared at the glittering sea. In his hand was a blood-stained sword. The occasional high wave washed off the blade, but the puddle of blood around him was visible here even in the moonlight. Well, Lappy, you see, if you had watched the finale of the Mikiwa route, you would know that this is actually, literally, the place where he does the sacrifice rituals. The public ones with the ox, that is, before going and doing the secret one down below. Yes. We were at the top of the gate. In front of us was the successor of the Oni Taiji Kempo, who was scarier than either a tiger or a wolf. We'd come out in front of the sanctuary, where it said that the sacrifices were offered to the god of the sea. We were like a bug flying towards a flame, rushing to our doom. If we compared pure sword skills, then this person was even stronger than the one-eyed Onmyoji we'd just escaped. His voice was strangely lifeless and weary. As Nakata-san gazed upon us, he didn't give off the same dangerous aura as before. Still, I didn't let my guard down and stood one step in front of Yasumi, guarding her from behind my shoulder, even though I'd lost Komochi and was weaponless. We were surrounded on all sides by the ocean. If this were a normal ocean, we could jump in to escape, but right now we might be sucked into the gate. The gate still gave off light and continued to swallow the seawater around it. If there was no way to escape it, then we'd have to stand and fight. His reply was like a deep, heavy sigh, and he didn't smash or deny our hope and determination right then and there. He didn't act aggressively at all, but seemed to accept her words easily. What happened when we were gone? Nakata-san, who had probably cut down Natsune-san and myself in the past, and probably Yasumi's older sister as well, and brought Yasumi to the sanctuary underneath the sea. He said that to us, who he had judged to be sacrifices. At that moment, a presence which didn't even try to conceal itself appeared behind him. It was the person we'd just escaped. We should have been washed away to here by the shortest possible distance, yet the Onmyoji was already standing on top of the gate. From the exit of the underground passage to the top of here, the shining waves roiled with an angry roar. How did she get here so quickly? And her clothes weren't even wet. Don't tell me. She jumped more than 10 meters from the shore to here? The sword was over there. While we were in the underground sanctuary, something must have happened here to make Nakata-san have a change of heart. The reason Mikiwa collapsed here was probably also due to that. The sword, which the one-eyed, white-haired Onmyoji told us to hand over. The sword that had been stolen from the Suten Onikiri group. A double-edged blade with an ominous miasma rolling off of it. So the person in front of us, who was at the underground sanctuary, wasn't the one who taught Nakata the ritual? And I had thought she was the one that Nakata had referred to as Onichi Hogen. If it was someone else, then I could understand her attitude towards the ritual now. The one-eyed, white-haired Onmyoji, who I thought was the one who taught the Nakata the ritual, finally told us her name. If she wasn't the Onmyoji who taught the ritual to the Nakata, why was she here? Why was she searching for the sword? If that were true, then was she on the same side as Minkiwa? Even if I wanted to ask that now, Minkiwa still hadn't regained consciousness. Kohaku fixing her one eye on Nakata as if saying that it was her turn to ask the questions. As if she were making a joke, she laughed heartily. So, the successor of Oni Taiji Kempo and the Onikiri whose job was to eliminate Oni had regarded Onichi Hogen as their enemy. She seemed to be an acquaintance, and she gave a loud laugh after hearing about how Onichi Hogen had died. I wondered if he was washed away and vanished, or if he'd been sucked into the gate. But her harsh gaze relaxed just a bit as she closed her eye. Ah, finally everything could be over. She drew her blade, and its bare steel reflected the lapis lazuli water. Was everything still not over? Since we knew that the one called Kohaku wasn't the one who taught the Nakata the ritual, I thought we could maybe end this amicably. The Oni who opened the gate had been defeated, and the sword returned. The Nakata would stop doing the ritual, and Yasumi and I would return home and be girlfriends in peace. I thought we were headed for a happy ending. If this girl was the key to solving the worst case scenario, get her and she'll be taken, hide her and she'll be found. It'd be fortunate to pick her up if she were tossed away. If that was the case, then a key like that should be melted. Since our reasoning and conclusion was clear, Kohaku didn't have any trouble carrying out those thoughts. I knew. I dimly sensed that past the gate was some frightening, terrible thing that would remain until a sacrifice was offered to seal it. However, it's not like the sword wasn't here. I had unknowingly raised my voice and was cut off sharply. The guardian of the sword was saying that it was a dangerous thing, just as dangerous as what was on the other side of the gate. It was a good move to kill two birds in one stone. The Onmyoji dismissed my naivete with a wry grin and looked past me at Yasumi. Even if what Kohaku said was true, even if this was the most efficient and surefire way, I couldn't accept it. If I was going to lose Yasumi, then I'd rather be putting my hopes on a bad bet than... It wasn't me, however, who spoke out. That's right, it really does, Guy. And I am, booing. I'm not going to boo, but booing Munetsugu. Boo. Their blades flew. Bright sparks scattered as the blades collided with each other. On top of a stone stage, illuminated by lapis lazuli light, the blade of the priest, dressed in white, danced. On top of the sea god's shrine, where for over 800 years The flesh and soul of oxen were continually sacrificed. The duty of the priest changed as he now protected his daughter from being killed. His sleeves and trouser cuffs fluttered. The sound of blades clashed in the air. They danced on a stage where the roar of the seven seas played basso continuo. Aoi-sensei said, in the ancient past, bugaku, traditional court music, and dance were rituals used to give offerings to the gods. The weaving of those blades that held the power to take life were bewitching, and the sword play made my heart pound. That was all Yasumi could say. I couldn't speak, and I could barely breathe. I could only fix my gaze on them both as the image of their fight was burned into the back of my eyes. The fight was a struggle. Like a raging wind, Kohaku continued her incessant, quick, violent strikes. To a newcomer's eyes, Nakata, who kept receiving those attacks, seemed to be in an inferior position, and Yasumi was also anxious. But, unlike me, who had a tough time defending myself against Kohaku, Nakata was safe and could sometimes counterattack. Each time, she would leap back to dodge as if going back to square one were her favorite hobby. That pattern repeated over and over, and the tense moments continued on and on. The fight continued as each tried and failed to gain the upper hand. I no longer knew how much time had passed. But all things started to wane. Their fight would also be over soon. As the two passed each other, there was no sound of clashing blades, and no sparks that flew in the moonless night. But the metallic taste in the atmosphere rose. The white clothes of the priest were dyed red, and the young Yoji bent forward and dropped one knee to the ground. The color of the clothes hid it, but the too white hand pressed on her shoulder had thick, red liquid clinging to it. At her feet was a puddle of blood, like a ripe pomegranate had been smashed onto the floor. I didn't know how Nakata-san was doing, but Kohaku probably had taken the more serious blow. It might even be a mortal wound for her, though even a serious injury such as that might not be the case. She was different from a normal person, and she might yet be able to survive even something that would kill a human. She stood up while pressing down on her wound. She lifted the edge of her lips and exposed her fangs. I'd heard that when a beast smiles, it's not used to indicate friendship, but rather to intimidate prey. Was she like that as well? Or was it because she was happy that she found an enemy who could hold her off? An opponent in a fight to the death. I wondered if she had fun summoning that thing that Yasumi and I saw underground. She yelled the name of her Onishikigami, and the shadow stretched, and then became so dense you could touch it. That Shikigami manifested out of steel in itself. The stone stage suddenly felt cramped. Was that a physical reaction, or a psychological one, or a combination of both? The scales of battle, which had been balanced before, now became an uneven 1-on-2 fight. Though she had suffered an injury, you couldn't say that Kohaku was out of the running. And in addition, Nakata wasn't a good match for the new opponent, Oniwaka. From what I could tell, Nakata-san's fighting style relied on thinking and presented no openings. You read the opponent's moves and dodged with the slimmest of margins in order to increase the chance of successful counterattack. But that huge Oni didn't plan on hiding its movements. It would just rely on brute strength and speed. If it were a human that would collapse when cut, Nakata could manage easily. But Oniwaka wouldn't stop even when cut, and would continue attacking relentlessly. A mortal wound turned out not to be much of a hindrance to Kohaku or Oniwaka. Even Nakata's strikes could slice the head of an ox off with a single stroke. Couldn't stop this monster. Even if Oniwaka was pierced with 1,000 arrows, he would look like a hedgehog and keep going. Right now, Oniwaka still hadn't caught a hold of Nakata and was just striking at the air, but even if Nakata's stamina was extraordinary, he would be exhausted soon. And when that happened, a single blow from that Oni would surely be like getting hit by a log, and no matter how sturdy your body was, it'd do you no good. And that enemy wasn't his only opponent. Using Oniwaka as a shield, Kohaku was even more cunning than before, changing her tempo and attacking Nakata-san and withdrawing regularly. The white clothes he was wearing were dyed red. Kohaku's blows weren't fatal, but losing blood would definitely rob Nakata of his stamina. And just like this, Nakata-san would... I wondered what I could do. It was a fight between a master swordsman and an Oni. There was no room for a novice like me to intercede, but I had to do something. The sword. If this could be used properly, the fight wouldn't have happened in the first place. But with this, even its guardian Oni feared it. If it was a divine sword capable of sealing the Dragon Palace, it should be at least able to provide a distraction. Perhaps it would even affect the wielder that controlled the Shikigami. I prepared myself and reached out my hand. I touched the handle of the sword and wrapped my fingers around it. I felt something like a shock that numbed my body, my skin, my bones, and caused my hands to shake. A feeling of nausea stuck in my throat. It was like colors got inverted and that black dizziness made me want to collapse. However, I was able to hold it. Unlike Kohaku, Oniwaka didn't move around as much, and he was a huge target. Kumochi was already broken. I wasn't used to using a real sword, so I didn't think I could really strike an effective blow. Worst comes to worst, though, I might even cut my own leg. I'd heard of such things happening from Natsume-san. However, with this sword, just hitting it, my skills had a long way to go, but even though I still hadn't caught up to Natsume-san, charging straight ahead and attacking the enemy, if I could do even just that, I took a breath. I prepared my spirit for the moment as I sucked in the salty metallic air. Yasumi's voice acted like a tailwind behind me. In order to protect her, I'd go forward. It was a lance, a single spear. The target was large, and I shouldn't miss. Since the opponent was such a brawny Oni, I could strike it wherever I liked. That's why I would hit. That was my goal. The sword sliced Oniwaka's leg, and it stuck. Whether it came from the sword or from Oniwaka, a muddy miasma, black in color, covered my field of view. The pulsation and scream made me drop the sword, and then Oniwaka disappeared. Kohaku howled. She screamed in an infuriated voice and pointed her sword at me. Her hand was caught by Nakata. Nakata held her tight and didn't let go. Nakata understood the condition of his body better than anyone right now, and, nearing his end, he apologized. Wow, blessing received. And then Nakata-san, at the very end, made an expression that Yasumi might have occasionally seen when she was young. A boyish, awkward, impish smile. He disappeared beneath the waves together with the oni called Kohaku. Now, everything. Oniwaka had disappeared. Nakata and Kohaku had both sank beneath the sea. Everything was quiet. The roar of the waves continued from the lapis lazuli oceans surrounding us, and my ears began to grow accustomed to its din. The actors of this kabuki play had left the stone stage, and it was now filled with a mysterious silence. The storm had passed, and the clear sky was lit up by the moon hanging quietly in the heavens, giving off a pale blue light. Just as it's hard to see the stars in the bright midday sun, light surrounded by an even stronger light will look dim. If it were a normal night sky, the moonlight would be like a lamp, but now it could only illuminate a bleached white circle. To be able to drown out the ocean of stars shining brightly like gold and silver grains of sand demonstrated just how overwhelming the azure light emanating from the gate was. The water's surface fluctuated, and though the light given off might change second to second, I didn't notice any gaps in it. The presence was such that I almost forgot about the rumbling roar of the air. That blue castle wall looked as if it could even withstand the roar of 1,000,000 soldiers. The sword in my hand vibrated, as if it were pressured by that presence and fearful of the lapis lazuli light. My own senses were probably numb, but there was definitely something frightening on the other side. Setting aside the means, I continued Nakata-san's task of closing the gate, something that should never be opened again. But how? Alright, now we have two choices here, but I think we all know that these are non-choices at this point. Your choices could be to hesitate or, well, let's do it. That's right. If I use the sword to close it. Up until now, she hadn't spoken. The pale young girl interrupted me with her words, saying that she'll do it. The abyss of her eyes was so clear it was frightening, and it resembled the same lapis lazuli light of the gate. Her gait wasn't like the unsteady tottering one of a chick, but a calm and composed walk, like that of nobility. Her long hair swayed, and her white kimono fluttered as she drew close to me, and took the sword from my hand. Nami, Yasuhime, said those words as she declared her identity to the world. waving, waving. Her long hair swayed, fluttering, swaying, fluttering and swaying. Her hair was like a white flag, fluttering. The undulations held her magical power. It took that shape in order to become a vessel capable of accepting close to limitless power. It was like a sacred object of worship coming from the vast ocean. And therefore, the longer her hair, the closer it became to its original form. That's why in ancient times, when a Miko invited a deity to possess her, she dressed in loose, long clothing with a trailing skirt. Hair was a mystical item where God could reside. Yasuhime subjected the sword to the power in a body possessed by a deity. She softly sank into the middle of the ocean. At the very end, the gate emitted a markedly brilliant lapis lazuli light. The enormous amount of water rushing into the gate suddenly had nowhere to go. Crashing into itself, it stretched upward. A mountainous wave was about to smash into us. And then we I do love this part. Hey, we remembered that Mikiwa was also unconscious and super close to death there. Is she fine? Probably. She's very robust and strong. I'm sure being swept out to sea wouldn't hinder her at all. And that is our next ending, but we have the epilogue. The popping sound of wooden swords clashed and resounded loudly within the gym. The special summer filled with turmoil was over, and we returned to the life we'd been living up until now. In the middle of our calm, everyday lives, there were no tsunami-like upheavals, but there were definitely waves of change. Just as the waves slowly crest, our new lives slowly came to be. One of those changes was that Yasumi was wearing a protector again, since her stamina had recovered. Well, it doesn't determine everything. It's said that blood is thicker than water, so maybe that's something that can't be denied. Following a little in the footsteps that naturally talented person had when... okay, that's an awkward sentence, but basically following in the footsteps of that person with the natural talent to face down two Oni at once. By seeing how the opponent would move before she herself took a step, Yasumi was extremely good at counterattacking. Her body couldn't realize what her mind had mapped out just yet, but at times she was able to send a chill even down my spine. She was another rising star of hope, and a good foil for Momoko, who quickly covered her poor technique with athletic ability. Yes, it's fine to do as much as we can. Though we had different capabilities, by adding them together, we were able to expand further and farther. In that case, we didn't need to overdo things. It was fine for us to live our daily lives without straining. Yet another promising rookie joins the fray. Kaya Route Seal 2 has been unlocked. And that is the end of Yasumi's route. Now, you may think that perhaps that epilogue was surprisingly normal and not particularly dramatic compared to the events before. And you'd be right. A lot of Aoi Shiro's like happy end epilogues are kind of like, hey, you've just had a lot of stressful murder and death and dramatic vampirism and things like that. Let's just make the epilogue like, hey, they're in a slice of life anime now. So, you know, that's how a lot of the normal and happy endings are. That was, in fact, what the game considers Yasumi's best ending. And I can only imagine that in order to continue maintaining her strength, she has to suck her girlfriend's blood probably about every day. You know, her dad did give them his blessing before he jumped into the ocean, which, to be honest, given that he killed, you know, at least one member of his own family, Yasumi's older sister, and definitely killed Shoko's older sister / cousin, I think that's a fine ending for him. Yeah, I think that's fine. But that's Yasumi's route. We're done with that. And next time, we're going to start on, well, we'll see, because we've got a lot of route seals that we have to undo. And I'll have to take a look at see just how many of them are interesting, and if some of them are really interesting, then maybe we'll go ahead and do some of those on stream. And if they're not particularly interesting, or they're really close to things that we've already done, then we'll probably not, and we'll probably just go on and, you know, we'll just start up on Kohaku's stream next. Kohaku's route, not Kohaku's stream. I wonder what sort of games Kohaku would stream. Until then, though, thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed, once again, us resetting, oh wait! We managed to cut it so that there was no vampirism tonight. Oh heavens. Well, that counter will keep ticking up. And until next week, I will see you all again, and thank you for joining us once again for Aoi Shiro. Yes, yes. Good night, everyone.